All right, guys, I'm serious. No Nevadic talk today, I promise.
You're not going to talk about Nevadic. What's the catch?
Yeah, right. He's going to slip it in before we hit the halfway mark of the episode.
Nope, I'm done, I swear. But did you know 70% of top performing interactive demos are ungated? And those ungated demos get 5 to 10% more engagement than gated ones.
Wait a second. Yo, isn't that literally from Nevadic's report?
I cannot confirm or deny the facts of that statement, but I can share the new data about demo centers.
Oh, here we go. Let me guess. Demo centers are 3.75x more popular now, and they're driving crazy conversions.
Exactly. And if you're still gating demos, basically leaving money on the table.
You know what? Fine. Nevadic wins this round. Where do people go to check out this new report?
Oh, so glad you asked, Gab. Head to Nevadic's website and go to the State of the Interactive Product Demo 2025. And sorry for pretending I wasn't going to talk about Nevadic.
We are a podcast for product marketers and B2B SaaS who feel misunderstood of what they do.
From someone who truly gets what you do. And
Basically help you feel less like a misfit, being unignorable in your role.
Yo. This is Zach from We're Not Marketers. Coming at you live. This is the last final episodes of 2024. When this episode does play, it will most likely be January 2020. We got a special topic for you all about how we met. But before we dive into that, let's introduce our fellow co-hosts. Passing it over to Gab.
Thank you. Gab Bugeaud, sales deck intern. Or associate, I still don't know, but I feel like I'm progressing now. I'm doing less sales deck, and when I do them, they are better. But yeah, happy to be here.
it's because you're using AI for it. But hey, I'm Eric Holland, Franken manager of the group. And yeah, guys, let's talk about how we met, how we got this little band of misfits got together.
Yeah, it's a common question we get from listeners. I think twice, 3 times a month.
Yep. And
Yeah.
people are trying to engineer it for themselves. We got some comments, hey, I'm trying to do something similar. How can I met similar guys?
Yes.
So I think it's a good topic to dig a little deeper.
Yeah. I think one question off the boat, like the one to really answer out of that, is that I think this show came up pretty organically for us, right? Like when we came up with the show topic, we just started chatting up because one question I got, shout out to Ryan Worm, is that he asked, he's like, hey, did one person come up with the idea and built the podcast and just brought you on? We're like, no, actually, we just kicked it.
Yep. That's a good point. I think it was done basically. I won't say the secret ingredient here is a bit of community, right? Or relevantness between everything we were all dealing with. I know the three of us were very displeased with our individual roles with a bunch of different reasons. So that was a main driver, right? Like we understand that right now we're not doing exactly the type of work that PMM should do or that we feel like we should do. So that was the first thing. And the second thing, and again, I know this doesn't sound very millennial of me, but it was the vibe, man. Like just by chatting with you two, I was like, okay, those guys are going to be very good friends. And we know how male friendship works, right? Like you chat with a guy, oh, you do this too? Cool. And automatically we become friends, right?
But and let's build a podcast together.
Karate in the garage.
Exactly.
The equivalent of making the band.
No Diddy in this one.
No. He is not part of this podcast.
Not part of this podcast.
No affiliation.
But yeah, and I think if we take it back, like even before we met, right? It was like Zach I knew because I was creeping on him from an old job as a competitive, intel person, and then just kept up, loved his posts. Gab, same thing, came across you, loved your posts. And yeah, you reached out and was like, let's chat about some stuff. Like, what can we do other than just post witty comments on each other's LinkedIn posts? And I think it naturally went right into that where we were like, oh, this is the crew. Like, this is the boys. This is the band of misfits. And Yeah, conveniently, I think we stumbled on some like venting and some bitching and some moaning together, and it turned into, okay, this is something we could probably find other like-minded people and have the same conversation with.
Yeah.
It was so easy. It was the easiest project, I think, to like come together and work from that perspective.
It's a very bad buzzword, but it felt very frictionless, right? Like it doesn't felt like, oh, I need to spend efforts into making everything work, because sometimes you organize events with friends and it's like, oh, we're just going to brunch together, and then it's like you feel like everything is on your shoulders, and you're like, oh, okay, so can we do this? Like, oh, I'm not available, and then just become like a whole thing not fun to do. With you guys, it was automatically very easy to communicate, very easy to have a similar mindset on. But even when we disagreed, it felt like, oh, okay, I didn't thought about that, and the results just became a lot better altogether. I think the podcast was a good idea because for two reasons. The first one, you immediately understand the work ethics of others, because you have a deadline, you have to push something, you have to be creative about it, and we all chimed in very quickly. And the second part, I think, was just the fact that the banter and the rapport got created very quickly, and the work was split in three, right? If someone was able to work a bit on it, it just reduced the bandwidth because it was always split in three ways. So I think this really helped the longevity of the podcast to get up to that point, but also making it feels like a piece of cake sometimes.
Yes. And one question I want to call out for you all, because I feel like this is a question we've gotten a few times from listeners, is that how did we come up with our point of view? Because the reason why I want to call that out is that I think one mistake that I know I made early on when I made a previous podcast or any project is that it's like, hey, let's just talk about these topics and that's the show. But I think what was really cool is that our point of view really helped us shape the show. So I'm just curious to hear from you all what worked for us, with the caveat that it might not work for everyone. But I'm just curious because that's a question I get all the time.
I'm going to throw your caveat out for a second because I do think I so strongly believe in this, Zach, that I do think anyone can do it. And we tested it, but we came out with such a unique point of view, something that obviously not like everybody believes in, but something that we felt to us was true. And we could back it up with data, and we could back it up with conversation. And so, like, I firmly do believe that if anyone wants to create something, like our product was conversation through podcast. But if you want to create something else, I do firmly believe that you find that band of people who you feel really confident in, figure out that unique point of view that, like, doesn't have to be a fact, right? It needs to be an opinion. You need to hold it very strongly. And then you have data that like you can actually have that conversation and people can agree with you. I do think that's a replicable thing. It just, of course, like it's how you do it is the secret, not just like going out and trying it. I think we were very deliberate.
Yeah, I like that part.
Approach.
It was like testing a biggest gap. I remember the post you shared, and that kicked the hornet's nest within the PMM Ivory Tower.
It, as Eric said, it was a good way to do some message testing, or at least using that as a test or litmus test to see how does it resonate, what do people think about it, why. You talk about how did we come up with this, and I want to put a caveat on what Eric said. If you say contrarian stuff like I don't know, lead generation should be something all PMMs do, for example, and then you can back it up with research or expertise or stuff like that, it will take off because it's contrarian. But in our case, it was not. Let's try to find the most unhinged or opposite POV, and let's just run with that. It became something that came up out of our discussion. To me, Eric was the catalyst of that idea or point of view, because he went from a position of PMM to a head of marketing in a startup that needed to deliver, to come up with leads, to manage campaign, to do a bunch of stuff that were very far left from what his role was when he was a PMM at the same company. And then he said, I don't feel equipped right now to do that marketing baseline job. So to me, like, PMMs are not marketers, because I just switch a role that I don't feel equipped to do. And it might be because of background, it might be because of like the structure or the context. But I was like, this is contrarian, this is spicy, this is good. And something that came up out of like our discussion from the beginning when the three of us started talking was, we like spicy stuff and not just food, right? We like banter, we like stuff that make people react, we like stuff that is memorable, aka liquid death and stuff like that. So I think Eric was pretty much a catalyst, and then we're just like, hey, let's be unhinged, let's talk about stuff that people are afraid of, and it just drove everything else.
I want to come back to that too, because like I think that was like thinking about our show, like in the growth, that was a huge differentiator. But going back to what we said here earlier, is that it sounds like one piece that the first immediate step that I'd recommend from what worked for us was that test out the point of view, like using LinkedIn or using the channel that your audience lives, and just share it. Because I feel like when you shared like that and we saw that traction, we're like, oh shoot, like we might have something here to build on. And then there was a second thing that like Eric, you mentioned here earlier, was that like we were talking, like we were venting, we were like bitching that day. We were like, gosh, we are product marketers, but we get brought in because a VC tells a CEO, it says, hey, the stage you're at, bring a product marketer. They bring you in. They don't really know what product marketing is. It's one of the few functions where we do internal road shows. Finance doesn't do that. Sales doesn't do that. But we go to every team and have to explain what product marketing does. And then we have to, and then it feels like we're starting at a deficit to prove out our value. So that comes in the way of like, oh, I'll do that pitch deck for you. Oh, I'll write this one pager. Oh, I'll do this competitive analysis. So then it kind of complicates what the identity of a product marketer is. And I think that's why we made it easier to say, like, a lot of the work we're doing today isn't marketing, because no one knows. Marketing doesn't even know what product marketing does sometimes.
It feels very like realistic what you said. Like when I was a PMM with like 9 or 8 other PMMs, we were talking with like 30 people marketing team, and it was always like that gray area. Oh yeah, PMM will take care of that. PMM will handle this. So then I think one of the big driver of the pod was, okay, well, we're just three goofy guys that are, Anthony said it himself, we're just three goofy guys trying to, put that narrative out there. But it was also, well, if we talk to experts, right, and if we get their opinions, maybe we'll be able to push that. But I very much agree with the terms you use. Yeah. It becomes the competition have PMMs or have product marketers without having a charter, an idea of KPIs that they should be linked to. And it just became, well, if we're able to have a podcast that can educate PMMs and other professionals working alongside them, maybe we can just create a baseline so it can be easier to understand the role and their application and ultimately the results we can bring.
And then Eric, to your point around like the branding piece, because I think what was unique, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, is that outside looking in, PMM today is very pedant. Like it feels like when I was not a product marketer, there's some ways of how product marketing was explained that it feels like you're being looked down upon if you don't know it. It felt it comes off as arrogant, for lack of a better term. And I think that was one reason why I felt like our branding made it easier to relate to. Because Gab, to your point, it was just like Anthony said, there's three goofy guys that are just jamming to product marketing. These are guys, and Eric, you said it before when we talked to guests, there's three guys, hey, we're just kicking it on a Friday afternoon, having a chill beer or non-alcoholic beverage on the patio. It didn't feel like three guys that were saying, here's how to do X, here's how to do Y. This is why I feel like our show wasn't finger wagging, but that's my take. I'm curious what you guys think.
I love it because that's what it is, right? Like, especially when starting out as a professional, you don't want to say, immediately, oh, I don't know what that is. And product marketing, the issue with that is, well, the name is self-explanatory, right? Oh, it's marketing about the product, right? But then when you understand it, really, you realize that it's not just that. It has different facets. If we're three guys in product marketing and we're saying that product marketing is not marketing and we're trying to define what it is, it shows a position of vulnerability, but that it's also showing that we're real with ourselves. We're real with the industry. We're real with the misunderstanding that this role and its function has. So naturally, by that, people feel that it's more authentic and feel like they should give it a listen.
That's true.
Yeah, and I think piggybacking off of that, we made it very abundantly clear when we started we wanted this to be something that we enjoyed. All that baggage we had in our previous work, it was very clear cut. We're not marketers. And to your point about vulnerability, it was easy for people to look at us and our approach, and we're like, we aren't the experts. We're bringing experts onto our show. So you listening in can become the experts in whatever that specific episode was about. I feel like that was very contrary to what you saw out in the public. It was like you felt like everyone kind of had to be buttoned up. They kind of had to have more of a handshake and tie type of mentality than Saturday morning with the boys cracking open a few beers, getting ready for, pre-gaming time. And I think that was like a big differentiator for us. But I also want to kind of double back to the positioning and, like we've had how many people, probably at least 80% of our guests tell us that we are marketers, right? They disagree with our positioning.
Oh yeah.
But we internally have never once been like, maybe we are marketers. Like we listen to other people's point of view, I think every single time. And we probably spend the day or the evening letting that sink in. But we went out with something that we held very strongly to ourselves, and we keep holding that very strongly now 42 plus episodes in. And so I'd also say, like, don't just create a contrarian point of view because it's contrarian. Like, you have to believe it. You have to, build it into what you're doing, right? We ask it in every single episode, the first question we ask. It's not just like a gimmick. And I think that's why it's so effective, is that we can take no after no to our positioning, but it doesn't matter. We know there's enough yeses out there. We personally feel it.
Yes.
And there's plenty of people who have that same like-minded, kind of community feeling that we have.
And I really like that, Eric. How many sellers hear rejection? Like, we're going to talk about fractional product marketing. How many no's do you get? But do you, after the fourth no, being like, oh, you know what? Our product probably doesn't work. Our point of view was designed to start a conversation. Like, even though there's 80% of PMMs out there that say, yes, we are marketers, there's still a small subset that don't feel like product marketers. And I think it's worthy enough to explore what's happening to make us to feel that way. Like you said, we've got no after no. Like, we've been bodied by Madison Leonard. We've been bodied by Colin Majak. We've been bodied by April Dunford. Like, yeah, we've been bodied by every
both of the Fletch boys.
I'm like, there's probably people who are, like, upcoming guests that are gonna body us again. But, like, to your point, is that what's really cool is that we get to have a conversation, learn different experiences, resonate with that, and we can see, like we're reasonable enough individuals to be like, yeah, okay, we can see, like, how that aspect can be marketing. But, like, help us better understand, like, why is it that there's still this misconception? And I think that's what's really cool about this, is that we all come out better from each episode. And we're humble enough to know that, like, hey, you may not agree with us, but that's okay. Like, we're going to live. It's not the end of the world. The ivory tower will not collapse.
Exactly. And I think it's, when we talk about positioning, we talk a lot about, okay, so this is the company in the market right now, right? This is how I'm trying to control as much as I can the perception that the market has of my product, services, or whatever else. I think that right now we're doing a good job because it's 80-20. But the more we're talking about guests, and experts, the better we're going to answering that question. And I think up to a point, either after 50 or 100 guests, we'll be at a point where we'll be able to defend that point of view a lot more with data, with research, with understanding, with different charters, different organizations, different contexts, different situations. Like, even if this positioning isn't what it is right now, I think the progressing of the pod will get to a point where we're able to back our shit out, right? Because we've been fractional PMMs for a while. We've been touching different angles. We've been working on alongside different experts. And now we can say that current version, for example, of product marketing, maybe in the future it will be, because everything else will change. We'll see market shift. We'll see a bunch of stuff. So yeah, it's just a fun kind of hidden in plain sight research project that we're having.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll be able to turn that, reverse those numbers to 80% people will believe that PMMs are not marketers and 20 will still believe against us.
And like history, if any of us are history buffs out here, history will show what was mainstream today was once on the fringe of society way back in the day. I was talking to Gab earlier. I've been watching Chuck Norris, Texas Walker Ranger.
Walker Texas Ranger.
Oh, Walker Texas Ranger. I've been watching it, not listening to the title apparently. But this was Walker Texas Ranger for the purists out there that want to have the title right, like Eric. Walker Texas Ranger. This is a grown man in the early 90s, like late 80s, who was like, I don't use computers. I write on pen and paper. But today, a lot of what we do is run on computers. Let's look at music. Like rock and roll back in the 50s was considered like Black American music. It sat on the fringe of society. Like, no, it was called the devil music. But today, like, rock and roll is used to play jams and, like, when we're working out. Same thing with gangster rap. That was on the fringe of society. But now you got SKO kickoffs where people are rapping about product features and, like, it's mainstream.
You ready? And you ready? Tattoos in the workplace.
Yes. Like,
go look up Devin Reed.
You can have tattoos in the workplace. So, like, we're not saying that there's going to be a world where everyone's going to be like, oh, yeah, product marketers aren't marketers. But it's worth exploring is that what was not considered a quote-unquote popular opinion, things can evolve. Things can change. And from what we're seeing and from, like, what people are feeling and what is being reflected, this is worth exploring. Is this a change? Is this a fad? Or is this a trend that we're going? Who knows? That's
and we believe in it.
Most important point.
Like, we believe in it every day.
Yeah.
There's not a single day that goes by where we're like, yeah, I mean, this whole we're not marketers thing just isn't vibing with the market anymore.
Yeah.
Like, we're seeing the growth, whether it's from our LinkedIn numbers, whether it's from the podcast numbers, whether it's from the organic conversations and people asking us, what's your next move?
Yeah.
Right? I think that all stems from, like, we believe in it. And
yes.
people, like, Anthony's a great example. He loves what we're doing, doesn't believe in it one bit, would throw it in the trash, but he loves.
That man hasn't bought a sweater. He hasn't bought a sweater from us, but I bought his sweater. And when I hit him up, I was like, hey, you're going to buy our sweater? No response. And if he's listening to this right now, I can pull up the receipts.
This doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel fair.
And you know what that teaches me, like, in the grander scheme of things? People can disagree with you, and they can still value what you're doing.
Exactly.
Right? They can even eventually buy your product or your service.
Yes.
Right? Because at the end of the day, like, that's just how it works. People are going to disagree with you, and I would rather do it in a way that, like, picks a side instead of, like, sits on the fence or toes the line. Like, yes. I want to be in a lane, and I'm so proud that we've done that, and we've felt so confidently for, over 12 months now about that opinion that we still hold so strongly.
And one thing, and one misconception I want to call out, because I feel like this has been maybe a very quiet part that people might have seen from us on, like, online. yo, so we went to Drive. We're part of the Exit 5 community. Like, Exit 5 being like a B2B marketing community. Some people could come up and be like, oh, you guys say you guys are not marketers, but you're in this marketing community. You're part of the marketing org. It's like, yes. But it's like, we are not ignorant to not like be open to hearing of learning about across other marketing disciplines.
Exactly.
Because we're not marketers doesn't mean that we don't
We're
want
not
to.
learners.
We don't learn good.
We don't do education.
We like swear off anything marketing. I think like
That would be
here's a-
idiotic.
yeah, it would be like stupid. It's
Well,
like
it's like you learning AI, Zach.
Yeah,
You know, you're
yeah.
not learning AI just for the sake of being a product marketer.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
There's so many other skill sets that you can. You're right.
Mhm.
We went to a marketing conference. We're part of a marketing community. A lot of our friends are marketers.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, that was the beauty of it, is like we could infiltrate a marketing event, pretend to be marketers, learn
Yes.
some really awesome information.
Heck yeah.
And yeah, I think that was an easy thing. Plus, the best of it was when we talk about the topic of how did y'all meet, that's when we actually got to meet for the first time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And we
we-
spent a few days having one of my favorite spurts of a time period that I can recall ever. And bringing it back to when we first got together virtually, there was this immediate like, yeah, this is going to be a good week.
Camaraderie.
This is like a family that I've had for forever, and this is us. This is like our reunion. Almost.
Yes.
That's how it felt from the moment that both of y'all stepped in that Airbnb. You know, again, I think that's definitely helped push us over the last few months, give us some new like ideas. It obviously helped us earn some money from this whole thing. And I definitely say, as much as we like our remote life, you see those moments where you can get together, jam, spread some new ideas, and it definitely was worth every bit of investment we put into it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're planning ahead. You know.
Yeah. And you know what's
Yeah, so
really
if you are listening to this, we would love a DM for you to tell us, what would you like our next move to be?
And we do have a few ideas too, so like don't think we're like writing from a blank slate. But you know, another really cool thing that I feel like a quiet part that we haven't said out loud yet is that I think one, Eric, you hinted at this earlier, is that I feel like question we ask ourselves implicitly, but we like because we've just been doing this so many times we don't say it out loud anymore. Is that what is the stuff we couldn't do in house that we can do right now? Like Eric, when you brought up the whole skeleton branding, I've said this before. I was like, yo, I'm about to lose my job. I'm not going to be employable anymore. And then when you guys were like, hey, put a skeleton by your LinkedIn name, I'm like, oh, yep, no, this the nail in the coffin right here. No one's going to hire this guy.
You're all in or you're all out.
Zach's
Yeah.
like, I will be an all-time fractional now.
Yeah, I'm like, I guess this is what I'm going to be committed to, because like they're going to be like, oh, this guy's going through something right now. Like he's got a skull right by his name. Like people ask me, they're like, yo, what's up with this skull? I was like, oh,
Yeah.
it's for our podcast. And then when I explained this to them, they're like, oh, that's really cool. I'm like, whew, yeah, because, yeah, that's what I thought too when I first put it on.
Dude, you absolutely nailed it. One of the best parts about all of this, but we all have the freedom to do the stuff that we can't do with our normal 8 to 5 type of work.
Yes.
You know, everything from you said, like the art to the memes we make, most of the stuff that we make, we put out there.
What you're talking about immediately.
You know what I mean?
There's been some
most of the
controls put in
stuff
place.
we put out there without like, you know, a big supervising process. We write up a newsletter. We all give it a quick read, but like there isn't this big approval process in nearly anything we do. And of course, you know, when you're working at a large organization, there's complexities to all that. But our best work, or my best work, typically happens at We're Not Marketers, because I don't have all of these rules and restrictions and layers of bureaucracy I got to go through. I just kind of throw a crazy idea at you guys, Normally let you sit on it for a few days and then we execute on it and it comes out really fun and really cool. And we all like, have a blast and, it typically becomes like a memorable experience.
Wearing wigs at
Yeah. Well, like Ben Franklin, whatever you were, Zach, Tiger King.
Target Tiger
Yeah.
King.
whatever you were wearing a
Well, no, yeah.
we don't know what you
We don't want to assume.
But yeah, I would definitely advise you to do the same thing. You got to put rules and boundaries, I'm sure, but the least amount of those that you have, the farther you're going to go, the more fun you're going to have. We talked to Devin Reed. He said the richest person isn't the salary or the title. It's whoever has the most creative freedom.
Yeah.
And that's why it doesn't matter if it's a newsletter edition or a Dolly art cover or editing a podcast episode or getting contract stuff done. I love doing that work and I look forward to it because of all the other shit we get to do outside of that.
But that was also one of the, I don't want to say like requirement, but if you remember, like a year ago, we did the 12 days of PMM. And I remember at the beginning of that project, like all of us needed to record like another product bugs or whatever else. You said, I look so much forward in being able to do that kind of stuff and not having to like go to an ethical committee or just people being, no, it won't work. It's not far enough. And I know, like, I like that zaniness that you bring because Zach and I sometimes don't think about it, or sometimes I have ideas and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to be thinking about that. But those ideas and just the openness we have to those weird and sometimes a lot of fun projects is just feeding our fun matters. And I feel like this is true for us as fractional as well. Sometimes you have a client or a prospect that might pay you a lot of money and you're like, cool, I can pay my bills for a couple of months. But this person doesn't seem nearly as fun as other prospects that I might have talked to. So I think it should always ultimately be linked to fun, right?
Yeah. And I think, like, Eric, like, giving you a rose, it really tackles this myth within product marketing that to be a successful product marketer, you have to be professional. And I put that in air quotes because, like we said earlier in the conversation, is that you've got to give off this air of, like, oh, I know what I'm talking about. Like, SEO is dead. And let me give you 3 reasons why. And this is why my approach is the best approach and why every other approach sucks. And I think what's been really cool about, like, we're just here to have a good time. We're here to have fun. Like, we're not experts. We're open to hearing different approaches and become better at what we're doing. And I think, like, Gab, to your point, is that, like, it shows up in our podcast. Like, when we hear listeners like, hey, I really enjoy your podcast. And I feel like we keep on citing Devin Reed because I think, like, this is another point he said, is that you can tell when marketing is having a good time. It's so easy to see. And you can tell when marketing, I remember when I provided a suggestion to a social media team of like, hey, let's post our link as a comment because when we do that, then the algorithm is not going to suppress it. Their response was like, did LinkedIn give any guidance on that? Like, what official documentation do you have on it? It's like, no, like, this is like through the, and they're like, well, I don't think, it's crazy. But it's just like, I think what's really cool is that we're willing, like Eric, you said, like, we're willing to throw an idea out there, and we're like, as like, I feel like for me, it's, hey, we're good people. We know we're not punching down. And it's like, hey, we're punching at a problem. We're punching up. We're like trying to bring awareness to it. We're trying to do it in a fun way. I think that's what's been really cool about this show so far.
100%. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think none of us will ever lose an opportunity because of what we've created. We've already seen on several occasions we're gaining opportunities because of what we're doing. And, you know, I know we position ourselves as we're not marketers, but back in the day when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, I chose between graphic designing and marketing. Right? Those are the two paths. I didn't even know what product marketing was. But find anyone product marketing, demand gen, content, fucking ads, doesn't matter. Any of those people that joined because they didn't want to have fun, right? Like, I feel like it should be fun. Any job should be fun, right? But like that job in particular was bred to have fun. And so when you strip away all of the bureaucracy, you get stuff like what we have going on. It just shows people enjoy it, people dig it, they're willing to buy goofy sweatshirts. Ultimately, we don't ever come into work wondering like, oh man, do I like doing this? Is this fun? Should we be doing this? And our turnover rate is 0. So we're doing pretty good, I'd say. From an HR perspective.
We got a new employee. We got a pickup truck.
Pickup truck hasn't left us yet.
Then we have another employee, I think, that's on our company page. We've almost 2x'd in the past year.
Yeah, no layoffs.
No layoffs.
No one leaving.
No one leaving.
You know?
We're trying.
Great. Investors are happy.
Our sponsors are happy. Well, yeah. I haven't personally checked in with our sponsors yet, but I assume they're happy because I haven't heard any. We'll check
exactly.
in.
One of my parting words as we wrap up this episode is, if you're just like feeling it out there, itching, like, hey, you know, maybe I should find someone, go do it. You know, when you find like-minded people you can trust and you all believe in, you'd be amazed at how far you're going to go with it.
Love it. It's all about finding your people and then making sure they are all driven to one main goal together. And yeah, I'm very, very bullish and excited about the future with you guys.
The last one is gonna be a Stoic reading I had a few weeks ago.
Oh, let's go.
Stoic reading, let's go.
Bro, I'm ready for this. I even got the book on my counter right here. So, Stoicism, one sentence summary: the study of life. It goes back to Greek and Roman times. So, like, what is guidance to have a simple life? And this was one that I believe like it was Socrates that said this earlier. Epictetus. He's like, yo, there are 2 rules to a simple life: be a good person and do good work you love. He said, that's it. He said, if you can do that, you good. Like, you chill. I feel like this is like an epitome of our podcast in this past year. Is that like we're good people, like Eric, you said, like Gab, you've said this too as well, and we do good work that we love, and it shows up. And I think a third one, like I think about too, is that's been part of my like affirmations, like I love the work we do. I love what we do. Like Eric, you said this, you're like, it doesn't feel like work. Like we hit or jam it. I'm like, how many episodes did we do before we even got our first sponsor? Like, everything we were doing was because we fucking loved it.
Pure fun.
29.
Pure fun and
29 is the correct answer.
Yeah.
It's just been great. It's been great meeting you guys, you know, both virtually and then personally meeting you. And I don't see this train slowing down anytime soon.
Nah.
Well, then that wraps it up for another episode of We're Not Marketers.
See you guys.
Ciao.
Adios.
Thank you for listening to We're Not Marketers. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, review our podcast, and share this episode with other PMMs. Thanks again, and see you soon.